So Season of the Plunder is here, and after spending around 12 hours in the season so far, I'd say it's, well, it's a season. Now there are some things that I actually do like here, and a few things that have me a bit worried, to say the very least, about its longevity, but let's just go ahead and go over what we have so far. So the story and setup premise to the season is something that I actually really like. Aramis returning is, a little bit whatever, but her reintroduction to the story does come along with some really interesting developments between the fallen houses and some of my personal favorite characters like the Drifter and Spider. So from strictly a story point of view, I can actually see myself really digging this season, and that first story mission was a good introduction to what kind of is going on overall. That new Elixni hideout is especially awesome in my opinion. It really adds to the world building of the game, and more social spaces like this is exactly what I kind of touched on in a previous video years ago that I'm glad to see Bungie has been making some efforts to implement, because again, more social spaces or more places to travel to where NPCs kind of hang out or live is important for world building. And is it just me, or does this social space kind of look like the final boss room from Scourge of the Past? It has the same layout towards the back of the arena, or the area at least. Now on the other hand, from a gameplay perspective, I'd say that the seasonal activity content is just not very good this time around. The catch crash is basically just the wellspring, but with way less enemy density. With 6 players, it just feels like you're fighting to get kills. And thematically, it looks pretty cool, back on Europa in some fallen catches, aka ships. Shooting them with cannonballs is a nice idea, but we don't actually get to shoot the cannons ourselves. I think it would have been pretty cool if we had seen it done in a similar way to the Grasp of Avarice dungeon, Fallen Shield encounter, where we actually get to aim and shoot the cannons. But I digress. Overall, it's just underwhelming and kind of boring so far. Maybe each week it will change up in a meaningful way, but based on previous seasons' activities, I kind of doubt that. The second activity we get is called the Expedition Playlist, which is a 3-man public event style activity that is way too reminiscent of the Resonant Splinter event on the Throne World, I believe it's called. But again, whereas the Catch Crash is much less of an interesting version of the Wellspring, Expedition is a much less interesting version of the Splinter event. It's very long and drug out and just not very fun to run through. As cool as the Scallywag title is, I just don't see being able to put myself through these 2 activities enough to bother with getting the title. And while Season of the Haunted didn't have an amazing activity, and by the end of the season I was worn out with it, I didn't mind running it or engaging with it in order to get the Reaper title. In fact, I actually enjoyed working towards the Reaper title quite a bit. But with these 2 seasonal activities that coincide in Season of the Plunder, I have to just say that I'm already pretty over them. And after completing these activities in order to progress the quest line, we're tasked with one final mission before we get time gated until the next week. And that mission is one of the pirate hideouts where you defeat a guy named the Brute. It's a Cabal guy inside of his hideout. And I'm guessing each week will end off with one of these pirate hideout missions, and the first one, while short, was actually the highlight of this week's content to me. It's a pretty simple mission, but enjoyable and has some good dialogue to go along with it. And I just really wish we could play through the rest of the story missions at once instead of waiting for them week to week. I know that will never happen because Bungie and their players love drip feed content, but man, does it suck to just kind of play through and get into a story and then it just stops cold turkey and then it's back to just grinding pinnacles until next week. It just kind of kills the flow, the vibe of the story that you're feeling. But again, I digress. Arc 3.0 is something I've only spent a lot of time with on the Hunter so far, and we don't have all the fragments unlocked quite yet, so my opinion on it will probably be more fleshed out as time goes on. But for now, it definitely is pretty good and fun as expected. But right now I'm making the prediction that it will probably be the least favorite of the 3 subclasses for me. Arc 3.0 can definitely lend to a lot of rapid ad clearing, but so can 3.0 Solar and Void. With a bit less effort, I'd say. The new super staff that the hunters get that is kind of like the Scorn staff where it electrifies everything is pretty cool, but I'm not sure it's top tier or anything. I don't really see its value as much as even just a Raiden Flux Arc Strider. But time will tell. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is going to be top tier, we'll see. Again, I've only played the Hunter so far, so more thoughts on Arc 3.0 will definitely come as I have a lot more time to make more of a solid opinion on it as a whole. Now, something that was actually surprising to me was a new PvP map on the Dreadnought. Cathedral of Dusk makes a return to the game, which is of course a Destiny 1 map, one that had a pretty low chance rate in the playlist during D1, so I'd say it's one of those maps I've played the least, but I did like the map in D1. It wasn't my favorite by any means, and in D2 it feels much faster paced, and it doesn't feel as big despite being a one-to-one recreation, but that's likely due to the sandbox of D2 and how much faster paced the gameplay is here. And I've only played a couple games on it so far, and that's because I try to stay as far away from PvP as much as possible, but I do hope to play it a little bit more often if I am, for whatever reason, playing PvP. Next up is Kingsfall will be returning to Destiny 2, which is of course exciting news to me as it's my personal favorite raid in the entire Destiny franchise. I'm curious to see what kind of changes are going to be made to the mechanics, most notably what's going to be changed for Golgoroth in order to force us to use all 6 orbs in the damage phase, aka doing the fight as intended. I made a video covering Kingsfall specifically yesterday, so be sure to check that one out when you're done with this one. But that's kind of it so far for the season. It's early in the season, those are just my first impressions. There's not really a whole lot else to talk about. I mean, there's a few things like artifact mods this season that include overload bows and stuff like that, and some of the mods seem like they could be good for Arc 3.0, but I don't have those unlocked yet, and time will only tell how we start to enjoy this season as time goes on. But those are my first impressions. It's kind of starting off a little iffy gameplay wise, story wise of course, good as usual as it has been lately. But hopefully soon I'll have some build guides out for you guys, primarily probably Hunter related builds, but I could probably play the other characters as well and get some builds there too. I'm interested in things like Risk Runner, of course. I've always loved Risk Runner, and Arc Strider's always been a favorite of mine. So I am excited to see the full potential of Arc 3.0, so expect at least one build video from me. But again, that's going to be it, guys. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more Destiny content, and I will see you all in the next one.